Good morning, all of you. Today's class will be on overview of DNA cloning. In the previous class, if you remember, just we have seen the syllabus we discussed, what are all the different topics we will be discussing in this course, recombinant DNA technology we discussed. Today's class also, it's not exactly the topic in your syllabus, but it is just the entire overview. Basically, what I'll be discussing in today's class is what was the necessity for this recombinant DNA technology to study as a separate branch of biotechnology or separate branch of science, one thing. Then, what are the applications of this DNA cloning or recombinant DNA technology? Then, I will also mention about the requirements of recombinant DNA technology. What are the main requirements for this procedure of creating recombinant DNA technology? So, now let's look at the details. Okay, what is cloning? What is cloning? Definitely, I have defined it in the previous class, but now let's look at the introductory part of it, how it has emerged as a separate branch of biotechnology. Actually, in the beginning, when people started analyzing the proteins, the main difficulty what they faced was the availability of the sample, meaning the availability of sufficient quantities of protein in the purified form. That was the major difficulty they faced with while analyzing the different types of proteins. So one approach they came up with to address this issue was isolating the genes which is responsible for this particular protein of interest and then expressing it. So if you are able to isolate the gene which is responsible for the expression of protein, you isolate it and put it in the appropriate expression system. Thereby you get the required quantities of the protein in the purified form, which will be available for your analysis. But what happens to do the isolation of the gene of interest and then expressing it also has a problem. How it is a problem? Because every organism's genome is quite large and complex, whether it is simplest bacteria like your E. coli, or if you go to the complex organism, the genome is large and complex, and any sequence of interest or gene of interest you are trying to study, that might occur only once or twice, only one time or two times for the cell genome. So in that case, if you are applying the available standard biochemical or chemical methods in order to isolate your gene of interest, what happens? You may not be able to isolate by applying these chemical or biochemical methods. Why? Because the rest of the genome, that means you are interested in your gene of interest. When you compare the nature of your gene of interest and the rest of the genome, chemically, biochemically, the characteristics or the nature is same. So since the nature of the rest of the genome is also similar, by applying your standard chemical or biochemical methods, isolating only your gene of interest is problem. So that's where they started looking for the other approaches in order to isolate your gene of interest, so that you would be able to express it in the purified and in your required quantity. So what did they do? So the bottom line is the available standard chemical or biochemical methods are not sufficient enough to isolate and express your gene of interest. So what did they do? So one solution they came up with, to address this problem is place a relatively short fragment of genome containing your gene of interest. Precisely taking your sequence of interest may be difficult. Instead, you place a relatively short fragment of DNA which consists of your sequence of interest, okay, and then place it in an autonomously replicating piece of DNA. You take the relatively short fragment of DNA, which is containing your sequence of interest, and place it on a autonomously replicating piece of DNA. That is the characteristic of the DNA on which you are going to place your sequence of interest. That should be able to replicate autonomously, and that autonomously replicating piece of DNA is known as vector. You are all aware that to produce or to create recombinant DNA, the very primary requirement is vector molecule. What is this vector molecule? A piece of DNA which has the capability to replicate independently of the host genome. So, when you place your fragment of DNA containing your sequence of interest into an autonomously replicating piece of DNA, that combination of these two pieces of DNA, which two pieces are present here? Your sequence of interest, and precisely speaking, it is a shorter fragment of DNA containing your sequence of interest, and it is placed in an autonomously replicating DNA, which is called vector. That forms the recombinant DNA. So far, you have the combination of two different sources of DNA. One is your fragment containing the sequence of interest, other one is the vector. Those two together forms recombinant DNA. I hope you guys are able to follow. Anyway, the questions we will be discussing at the end of the class. This formed recombinant DNA can be replicated. It can be replicated independently of the original genome. It can be replicated independently of the original genome, normally in another host species. And if you are able to propagate this host organism in which your recombinant DNA is present, that forms a set of genetically identical organisms. So how do you get this set of genetically identical organisms? This recombinant DNA, whichever is formed, had been incorporated or transferred into the host organism. When you propagate this host organism containing this recombinant DNA, that forms a set of genetically identical organisms, which you call it as a clone. Clone is a set of genetically identical organisms. This set of genetically identical organisms, which is called a clone, this is the one important process by which you get the sufficient copies of your clone DNA. And since the production of clone is involved here, this technology is also called DNA cloning. This technology is also called DNA cloning. So three names we have come across. What are they? Recombinant DNA technology. Why is it called recombinant DNA technology? There is combination or recombination of different genetic materials to produce a DNA which is capable of producing the desired trait or characteristic, right? We are manipulating the DNA, that is why it is called genetic engineering, and this procedure involves the production of genetically identical organisms, which is called a clone, which is why it is called DNA cloning. I hope this is clear for you so far. Moving on further. Now, let's look at what are the applications of genetic engineering. Broadly, I will just touch upon all these applications one by one in detail. We will be studying in the later classes. So what are the applications? This recombinant DNA technology is used for DNA sequencing. Once the DNA is sequencing, we would be able to derive the protein sequences, and we are also able to isolate and analyze the gene promoters and other control sequences of the genomes, and this is also used for investigation of protein, enzyme or RNA function by the large scale production of normal as well as altered forms of these molecules, whether it is protein, enzyme or DNA. Then identification of mutations, for example, the gene defects that will lead to the several diseases also can be analyzed. So these are all the applications. In addition, it is also widely used for biotechnology applications, especially for the large scale production of proteins that have got biological as well as therapeutic significance. For example, human insulin and growth hormone. These are the proteins which we were able to produce in larger quantities in commercial applications using this recombinant DNA technology approaches. Obviously, this technology is also used for engineering animals and plants. In the first class, I was mentioning about transgenic plants and transgenic animals. This is another very important example of this recombinant DNA technology, and the important medical application is this is also used for gene therapy. I'm not going into the details how exactly this recombinant DNA technology is used for all these different applications. One by one as a separate topic in the different units we are going to discuss. Also, protein engineering is another application. Engineering the proteins to alter the properties of these proteins. So these are the major applications where you will be using recombinant DNA technology approaches. Now, I also told in the beginning of class, we will discuss how the recombinant DNA technology started, with what intention, then broadly the applications of recombinant DNA technology, and also I told that I will be touching upon the requirements for this recombinant DNA technology. Obviously, the target DNA need to be isolated in the purified form in the sufficient quantities. Then the requirement is vector. We will also discuss what are the different types of vectors available. Then host is another important requirement for this recombinant DNA technology. So what is this host organism? By now, I hope you are able to follow what is host. This is the organism which is used for producing the set of genetically identical clones. As it is propagating, the DNA, the recombinant DNA present in this host is also getting replicated, right? So the hosts, what are the different hosts available for this recombinant DNA approaches? The initial stages of this analysis, like your isolation and analysis of these DNA fragments, is usually carried out by taking the simplest prokaryotic organism, your E. coli, as the host organism. If you want to carry out the analysis in the eukaryotic organism as a host organism, generally we go for eukaryotic organisms when the gene of interest is large in size. In that case, the simplest eukaryotic organism which is used widely as host organism is your yeast, that is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Next, as I told you, what are the different vectors? What are the properties of these vectors? We need to discuss. There are variety of natural replicons. They have the properties that allow them to act as cloning vectors. What are the property? One property already you know, it should be capable of replicating independently of the host genome. So normally they should be able to replicate, and we should be able to isolate them independently of the host genome. One criteria. Then some of these vectors are designed to incorporate the DNA, that means to incorporate the DNA of our interest into the host genome for long-term expression of the host genome. That means they are also designed to incorporate the DNA into the host genome. And another important property a vector should possess is selectable marker. They also should have a selectable marker. What is the selectable marker? A gene which allows the host cells containing this vector to be selected. That means if this vector is present in that organism, because of the presence of this marker on the vector, we would be able to select that organism containing the vector. How this selection happens? Usually by conferring resistance to a toxin such as antibiotic, or by enabling their growth under certain growth conditions. These are the mechanisms by which the presence of the selectable marker allows the organisms containing these vectors to be selected. So that is another characteristic. Two important characteristics we discussed about the vectors. Now what are they? One is it should be capable of autonomously replicating. Second character, to enable their selection, it should contain selectable marker. This enables the selection of the organisms containing these vectors either by conferring resistance to a toxin or by enabling their growth under certain growth conditions. The first E. coli vector which was extra chromosomal, which was the extra chromosomal circular plasmids. This was the first vector which is used for the host organism E. coli. What are the other vectors available? There are also number of bacteriophages that had been used in E. coli as vectors. Bacteriophages like lambda-phage, it can be used to clone the fragments. What is the purpose? I have mentioned that plasmids are the good vectors to use in E. coli. But we also have bacteriophage vectors like lambda-phage. When do we go for the other choices of vectors? Suppose there are size limitations. If you use plasmid as vector, the size of the fragment that can be cloned is limited. If you want to go for cloning of larger size fragments, in that case you have to go for the higher versions of the vector. So likewise, lambda-phage that can be used to clone the fragments which are larger than plasmid vectors. Similarly, another bacteriophage vector, bacteriophage M13, that allows the cloned DNA to be isolated in single-stranded form. If you have the requirement of your gene of interest in the single-stranded form, there are certain applications where you would require your gene of interest in the single-stranded form. In that case, you can go for the M13 bacteriophage vector. There are also certain specialist vectors which had been engineered to use the aspects of, that means by combining the properties of plasmids and also the bacteriophage vectors. Such vectors are called cosmids. So all these different types of vectors, we are going to discuss in detail what are the properties and how these different types of vectors are used in cloning, which means used in producing the recombinant DNA molecule. We are going to discuss all these different types of vectors in detail. And also, if the DNA to be cloned is very large in size, if you want to clone them in E. coli, we have bacterial artificial chromosomes. In short, they are called as BACs. And if you want to clone them in the eukaryotic organisms like your yeast, then we have ACs, yeast artificial chromosomes. So these are all different vectors we have available for creating the recombinant DNA molecule. Continuing the same, the different types of vectors, the plasmid and phage vectors, they can also be used to express the genes in a different range of bacteria other than E. coli. Some phages may be used to incorporate DNA into the host genome. For example, the phage lambda vector can be used if you are interested to incorporate your gene of interest into the host organism. And there are also plasmid vectors which are developed for use in the yeast. You have such example, yeast episomal plasmid. This is example of shuttle vectors. Shuttle vectors in the sense you can shuttle between two different types of hosts, usually the prokaryote and eukaryote. So such yeast episomal plasmids also had been developed, where basically the plasmids had been in the plasmid, several other sequences had been engineered so that they can also be used in the eukaryotic organisms like your yeast. And if you want to do cloning in the plants, you also have a bacterial plasmid called TA plasmid, which is isolated from Agrobacterium tumefaciens, that can be used to integrate your DNA of interest into the host genome. So TA plasmid is the vector which can be used for cloning in the plants. In other eukaryotic cells which are maintained in culture, you go for the vectors which are viruses that have got the property of naturally infecting these cells. Like, you know, your SV40, baculovirus, retroviruses, these are the viruses that can naturally infect the eukaryotic cells. Such viruses are used as vectors. So they may be used as vector by maintaining their DNA either extrachromosomally or by integrating into the host organism. So these are all the different types of vectors we can use for producing recombinant DNA. What are they? Just to summarize, plasmids, the simplest vectors. Then to go for higher size fragments, we have bacteriophage vectors like phage lambda, M13 bacteriophage vectors. And by combining the properties of plasmids and bacteriophages, you have cosmids. And for eukaryotes, the yeast episomal plasmids had been developed. And if the fragment size is very large, especially if you are trying to deal with the complex organisms like human genome. In that case, you can go for bacterial artificial chromosomes, BACs, in case of E. coli if you want to clone, or you also have ACs, yeast artificial chromosomes, and eukaryotic viruses are used as vectors like SP40, baculovirus, retroviruses. Then for plants, we have TA plasmid. We also have plant viruses that can be used as vectors. All these different types of vectors in the first unit, we will discuss their properties and how they are used in producing the recombinant DNA molecule. So this is the overview and the requirements of recombinant DNA molecules. So quickly, I will also explain what are the steps involved in producing the recombinant DNA molecule. Very important question, especially in unit 2, like essay question it is asked separately, prokaryotes, eukaryotes, explain the steps involved in producing the recombinant DNA molecule. But since it is the overview class, I mean, this is what we are going to discuss throughout your recombinant DNA technology course. I will just give the just the outline of the steps involved in producing recombinant DNA molecule. Obviously, first the isolation of genomic DNA containing your gene of interest. You know how the genomic DNA is isolated. So those are all the methods we need to use for isolating the genomic DNA. Once it is isolated, the entire genomic DNA cannot be used. You should be able to fragment and pick up the fragment containing your gene of interest. So you need to go for digestion to cut the DNA. Digestion or cutting of the genomic DNA into discrete fragments, for which you will be using your restriction endonucleases, your molecular scissors. Then once you cut them, you should be able to separate them in order to pick up your fragment containing your sequence of interest. So separation, that separation can be carried out by agarose gel electrophoresis. Then once the separation is done, purification of the desired target fragment which contains your sequence of interest. Then once that is isolated, then you would have selected your vector of choice. Then ligation of the fragment into a vector, selected vector, it could be plasmid vector or bacteriophage vector, to form your recombinant molecule. Then here when you have to do ligation, you go for another set of enzymes called your ligases for combining your sequence of interest into your vector molecule. Once the recombinant DNA molecule is formed, what are you going to do? Transfer of this ligated plasmid or recombinant DNA molecule into the E. coli strain. Transfer of this recombinant molecule into the host organism is called transformation. This also we are going to study in detail. Transformation into different types of organism, E. coli, yeast, and plant cells, eukaryotic cells, all that we will study. That is the transfer of ligated plasmid into the host organism, transformation. Once it is transferred, then you have to pick up the cells which are transformed from the other population of the cells. So there the step, selection of transformed bacteria. Here one thing I want you to note carefully, just if you pick up the transformed cells, that need not be the cell containing the recombinant DNA, because when you do this ligation step, always your target DNA does not ligate with your vector molecule. Sometimes two target molecules can be ligated. Sometimes two vector molecules can be ligated. Sometimes vector molecule, if it is plasmid, of course we need to linearize it before you add your sequence of interest. Without the incorporation of the sequence of interest, that may just get religated again. In that case, what forms? Just the vector molecule forms without the incorporation of your target DNA. So there are several different combinations of the ligated products formed. When you allow the transformation to take place, the host organism might take up one DNA. That could be religated vector, that could be two target molecules ligated, that may be your desired recombinant DNA molecule in which the sequence of interest is incorporated in right orientation in your plasmid molecule. So you also need to carry out another step, analysis of recombinant plasmids. You are interested in selecting the organism containing the recombinant molecule. So there are two steps: selection of transformants, that means the cells that took the external DNA, selection of transformants. Okay. And then after the cells are selected, the transformed cells are selected, you should also make sure that these transformed cells containing your desired recombinant DNA, that needs to be carried out. So these are all the steps involved in creating recombinant DNA molecule. So this is what I wanted to discuss in today's class, the overview of DNA cloning. I just discussed how it started, about the applications of it, the requirements. The requirements is target DNA, host, and the vector. Also discussed the different types of vectors available depending upon the requirement. And at the end, I also discussed the overview of the steps involved in creating recombinant DNA molecule: isolation of the genomic DNA, digestion, separation, and then ligation, then what? Transformation, selection of transformants, selection of recombinant molecules. Hope this class is clear to you. In the next class onwards, we will be discussing about the tools required for genetic engineering. I'll start with the enzymes required for the recombinant DNA technology or genetic engineering. Now we will discuss, and let's have some question and answers session.